start recording. So I got to suck my gut in because I'm fat. And then
puff my chest out.
There you go. Yeah. You're like,
flex.
I'm an operator.
Yeah. Just sitting here operating, folks. No worries.
Just operators operating. Let me pull that down there just a little bit. All right. Well, all right, folks. Back in the studio with me today, a true American warrior, former U.S. Army Green Beret from 1st Group, deployed to Cambodia and Afghanistan. He's currently serving in the Anchorage Police Department, detailed as a SWAT team member and a team sniper. A true badass and someone I'm proud to call my brother. Boys and girls, Mr. Theron Peplow. Theron, thanks for being with us today in the studio and checking out my toys and shit.
Thanks, Doc. I'm super stoked to be here.
Yeah. So we're going to pause and hear what this sounds like.
All right, so the first thing now.
Yeah.
Get the nerves out.
Right.
Hi.
Yep, and that's why we do it a couple times.
How are you, Dave?
Yeah. I'm here. I'm happy now.
Yeah.
So here's what. Well, all right, folks. Back in the studio with me today, a true American warrior, former U.S. Army Green Beret from 1st Group, deployed to Cambodia and Afghanistan. He's currently serving in the Anchorage Police Department, detailed as a SWAT team member. Call my brother, boys and girls, Mr. Theron Peplow. Theron, thanks for being with us today in the studio and checking out my toys and shit. I had dropouts.
I'm super
know what
stoked to be
happened.
here.
Yeah. So we're going to pause and hear what this sounds like.
Totally went down.
Yeah, it totally dropped out. I've never had that happen. They're called dropouts for a reason, but I don't know. Well, we can delete those. We can undo remove track. Undo edit label. Undo record. So I'll have to watch to see if we start dropping out. Whatever. Fuck it. We'll do it again. It'll be take 2. All right, folks. In the studio with me today, a true American warrior, former U.S. Army Green Beret from 1st Group. He deployed to Cambodia and Afghanistan. He's currently serving with the Anchorage Police Department, detailed as a SWAT team member and a team sniper. A true badass and someone I'm proud to call my brother. Boys and girls, Mr. Theron Peplow. Theron, thanks for joining me in the studio today and talking to me about your story.
Dave, thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here finally.
Yeah. We've talked about my program and the show pretty much since it started, and you've been giving me some critical feedback to help me make it better. So I thought it'd be right to have you on the show.
Yep. Thanks, man. I like listening to you now. I got to listen to myself for at least one episode.
There you go. And we have beer. So, and there's the mic. We've got some Rainier beer. For those that don't enjoy a good naturally brewed mountain fresh Rainier beer, they don't sponsor the show, but you should try it. It's good beer. So before we jump into things, there's something that you and I have talked about a couple of times that I think was appropriate for our conversation today. Are you an operator?
We have talked about this term quite a bit. No, I don't consider myself an operator.
So what is seriously though, without hurting some people's feelings, what's the deal with this operator culture and everyone wanting to be an operator and what's up with this?
So my time on a team, I don't think we ever used the term operator. And what I'm doing now, we use the term operator, and it's cool. But when I think of an operator, I think of a dude in a paintball mask or an airsoft dude running around in fucking kit.
Yeah.
You know, with air guns,
right?
Calling himself an operator.
Operate
on YouTube. You know, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, originally the term was kind of coined for the Delta Force, the Tier 1 guys, the Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, the CIA clandestine team, and then certain elite SWAT teams, LAPD SWAT, New York ESU, some of those, they kind of use the term, and I think FBI HRT used it a little bit as well, but it seemed like 5 or 6 years ago, it just became an operator culture, and everybody wanted to be an operator.
Yeah, and so I got out of SF 6 years ago, and so before that, we were just SF dudes. We just called ourselves SF dudes if we were bullshitting or whatever. We didn't call ourselves operators. It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good segue to talk about you and your story. So let's start at the beginning. So did you choose Team Life, or did Team Life choose you?
So I guess in a roundabout way, Team Life kind of chose me. I grew up, both my parents were in the military, active duty for a while. Through middle school and high school, my dad was a gunner with a 210th Rescue, and he tons and tons of deployments to Afghanistan. And my granddad on my mom's side was multiple wars and all that, Purple Heart. So I always knew I was going to join the military.
Right.
You know, my mom did it, my dad did it. It was I wasn't going to do anything else but join the military. Both my parents were in the Air Force, and going kind of into high school, I started saying, I don't want to be bored. I told my dad,
Right.
I don't want to join the Air Force. I don't want to be bored. I want to do something fun. And I kind of, you know, like any other high school kid, watching movies and seeing operators, you know, getting in all the gunfights and swinging from helicopters and jumping out of planes. I thought, fuck, that looks kind of cool. I want to do something like that. So it was always kind of a back thought. And my initial plan was to do college, and I was going to finish my degree before I joined the military, and then join as an officer, join as enlisted. It didn't, you know, I didn't think that far ahead, but I wanted to do something cool.
Yeah.
So I did 3 years, you know, graduate high school, and fucking listen to the Ballad of the Green Beret, like
Right.
just kind of in the background as I'm doing schoolwork and shit, just because who doesn't love the song?
Right.
And so I did 3 years of college, and after my third year, I was tired of spending money,
Right.
and not making money and not doing my part, you know, not doing something worthwhile. So I talked to a recruiter and thought, you know what, I'm going to do something fun. It was between kind of flying or something else. Flying was initially the thing I kind of wanted to do. Talked to a recruiter, like, yeah, you're not fucking flying. You got no flight history. You have no pilot's license, nothing. You're not flying. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, what else could I do? And you know, you take the fucking ASVAB and they give you that list of you can do anything you want, but a nuclear scientist. Like, you can be anything in the Army.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm going down the list, and Special Forces is on the list, and it's the 18 X-ray program. So I'm an SF baby. And I'm like, fuck, that's kind of cool. You know, if I can join with a contract, they guarantee an airborne slot once you get through basic. So you go through basic, you get your airborne slot, and then you've got the opportunity to go to a pre-selection and then a full selection.
Before we get into the selection process, because I do want to spend some time on that. So folks that regular guys from the force like me that never went over to the sexy side, or civilian listeners that listen to the program to get kind of an insight into the military life, so they understand what it actually takes to become a Green Beret. First, though, in your own words, what does it mean to be a Green Beret to you?
So it's definitely I think the biggest thing is a brotherhood, you know? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of shitty things that you got to go through. And we'll talk about in selection and deployments and all that. But the only people you have with you are your brothers, you know, the guys next to you. And so you get that camaraderie, and there's no camaraderie like it in the world or any other job that you're ever going to have next to fighting with your brothers, you know, life or death situations, and relying on them just as much as they're relying on you. So when I think of SF, it's definitely the brotherhood and knowing that, and in the military in general, but SF particularly, knowing that if I run into a dude on the street who used to be SF, who's a legit SF guy, you know, and we get to talking about what group we're in and everything else, like knowing that him and I have that mutual experience of suck, that
Right.
that it's gonna, that you're on the same level playing field. You kind of know who you're talking to.
Yeah, and I think that I completely agree with you, and I think in the war fighter community, there's varying levels. Like everyone does their part. And my next comment's not to take away from any specific person's military service, because everybody does their part.
Yep.
But there's a different caliber when you're behind a gun, pulling a trigger, gun on gun, focused on a battle with the enemy. The bomb loaders and bomb builders are important, because when we call for CAS, that saves the day. Sometimes it saves our life. Sometimes it gets us out of shit. And what I've noticed on the conventional side of things in my military career, hospital units, you got along with everybody while you were there, but then people almost resented each other because you were all competing. You were there for staff time to compete for a promotion or to do something. There was not really a feeling of brotherhood. It felt like a job. Mm-hmm. It was a profession. But when I was in infantry units, or even more so in cavalry or reconnaissance units, there was a tighter brotherhood. There was a tighter bond. That reliability of the man to your left and right was stronger. So I would imagine if you take a conventional fighting team and put it on steroids and elevate that up to the special forces level of op tempo, kind of danger, risk, everything that separates you guys from the rest of us, that bond would be immense. Yeah.
Like being where I'm at now, it's still different, but back then if you weren't deployed, you were home and you were training with the same guys. You were going to do JSETs, doing joint training in other countries together. And you can be on a team I was on a team for about 3 years, but you can be on a team for years and years. People do their entire 20-year careers or 30-year careers on maybe the same team. So these guys, we spend forever together. I mean, right. You spend more time with your team than you do with your wife and kids. So that's what creates you eat together, you shit together, you literally do everything
right
on a team. And there may be guys on the team you don't get along with as well, but you fucking love them. And you're still going to do everything you can to bring them home and support those guys.
Yeah.
So
before we get into the team tempo, which we do want to get into, for the listeners that might not be aware of what it takes to get into the special forces, can you kind of briefly walk us through selection? You talked about pre-selection when you were in the 18 X-ray program, the selection assessment process, the Q course, Robin Sage, the different stages of the pipeline that get you to where you're standing in formation and being presented with your Green Beret and you're a member of the Special Forces.
Yep. So I was, like I think I said before, I was fortunate to be able to join with a Special Forces contract, to be able to have that guaranteed airborne slot and to have the opportunity to go to selection. So it starts with, once you get through basic training, you get through the airborne, and people fail out of both of those. People, there's people that don't pass basics, people that don't pass airborne. You get the opportunity to go to North Carolina and do what's called pre-selection. And I think and they change it all the time. The Q course is adjusted constantly. So I think when I went through pre-selection, it was a month long. And it's at Camp McCall, and it's basically a workout fest for a month straight.
Yeah.
You're working out, and it's all led by a cadre who's putting your dick in the dirt and telling you to fucking eat shit and everything else.
Yeah.
So you're sucking all day long for about a month, and you're rucking, you're running, I was in the best shape of my life after the pre-selection. And then you get a little bit of time off, and then you attend the actual selection, and it's basically the big boy selection.
Yeah.
So, all the new Army guys who are the 18 X-rays who have no prior Army experience go through the SOP-C, the pre-selection. And then you kind of graduate once you pass that, and people quit that all the time. Like it's a lot of suck. It's a lot of suck before selection, because they don't want a bunch of dickheads going to selection who don't know what they're doing or not going to pass.
Right.
Wasting time. So once you get past that pre-selection, you end up at selection. And I'm a pretty little guy. I've always been a little guy, 175, 180 pounds, 6'1". And I remember standing in my selection class, and there was a couple hundred guys, fucking just cock strong, barrel chested, big motherfuckers that I'm standing around. And I remember thinking the very first fucking moment, I don't know, dude, this is I don't have a chance. Look at all these motherfuckers. They're Rangerback guys. They're all these dudes that have way more military experience than I had, and just bigger, faster, and stronger. You know, and I'm thinking, man, I don't have a fucking chance. And then it kicks off, and the selection I went to was 19 days, and for 19 days you were at their whim. They tell you everything that you have to do on a whiteboard. And some of it's vague. So you gotta be smart, and you gotta be able to interpret. Yeah. And there's like 2 Weeks in Hell, I think is what it's called. There's a real good show if you want to find out more about selection.
Yeah, I've
2
seen
Weeks
that.
in Hell.
Yeah.
And it was actually the selection class directly before mine.
Oh wow.
So a lot of those guys I went through the Q course with, and it's very accurate. But it's 2 weeks of hell. By the end of it, you're rucking, you're running, you're doing team events, you're doing brain tests, you're doing, a lot of it is learning too. A lot of the time they spend teaching you the history of SF and where we came from and missions and things we're doing, and it's a combination of everything.
Yeah.
Mostly physical, miles and miles and miles of ruck marching, of running, team events where you got to, everybody knows the broken trailer with one tire and no axle and all that shit. And the trick for selection, being on a team and being deployed, you get all the young infantry guys going, oh fuck, I want to go SF. What can I do about selection? I want to go to selection. What can I do? Do I got to run? Do I got to ruck? Like, yeah, you got to be in good shape. You got to run, you got to ruck, but it's all a mental game. It's the most important thing is your mental game.
Yeah.
Is not quitting. And I told all the kids, like, anybody can fucking do it.
Yeah.
Like, you just got to not quit. You got to know that it's going to suck. Your body's going to hurt. I mean,
my favorite line, and I think it's out of I can't remember where. It's a video of SEAL cadre at Bud's, and the SEAL instructors just yelling, "Find a fucking reason to win. Whatever you do, just find a reason to win."
Yep. Yeah, and that was it, man. Like, for me, my wife's dad is an SF guy, and it was kind of funny when we dated in college that at the time I didn't really know he was doing his officer time after enlisted SF, and I didn't really think anything of it at the time until I enlisted to be SF, and he goes, "Oh fuck, you better pass," and and my dad was kind of the same way, and I'm like, I'm not gonna let my dad down. I'm not gonna let my family down. I'm not gonna let my soon-to-be wife's father down as a fucking SF dude. Like, I am not leaving this place until I fucking pass. And so it was like, they're not gonna let you die.
Right.
And it's gonna fucking suck.
Yeah.
But just don't quit. Like, it's all gonna end. Eventually you will get through it.
So one of the things I heard about with some of my friends that went to selection and either got selected and went on when they would come home to PCS and go off to Q or whatever, you hear about guys getting peered out.
Yeah. So that was, at the time, it stresses people out at the time. And I remember being stressed out about it because I was an 18 X-ray, right? I was right off the street. I had no prior military experience. So all the dudes that were, and I was an E3 or E4 at the time. So I was a young, low enlisted dude when there's E5s, E6s, and at the max E7s going through selection and through the Q course, but selection particularly. So these guys had a lot to offer in the team events or in as far as military experience. I didn't have a lot of that, and neither did a bunch of younger other guys. Right. The biggest thing is teamwork. If you could be the dumbest fucker on your team going through the team week, but fucking, I'll do it. Yep, that's me. I'll do it. I'll carry that. I'll do this. I'll do that. It's me. I'll do it. Like, that's what you want in a team, right? You might have a team member that's a fucking idiot, but if he's got your back and he's gonna carry stuff and go no matter what, that's the guy you want on your team. We had dudes that were brilliant, great, like E7s that had been in the Army for 10, 15 years, who didn't do shit, who just weren't team players, you know, who did not want to take orders from an E3, you know, because you take your turn to lead in selection. And so you might be an E7 with 15 years in the Army, and you're taking orders from me, who's got all of 2 days in the Army, you know, and I'm leading a patrol or leading this team event. So the peer, it all kind of washed out in the end, but a lot of the peer evals, you get a blue card and a pink card, and a lot of it turned into kind of a senior guys peered out or pinked the younger new guys, because they had that brotherhood with their fellow Army guys. Right. So they, you know, hey, even this guy's kind of a jackass, but man, he's another E5, E6. He's done his time. Maybe he deserves to be here more than this kid. Right. So I think in the end, and you do them regularly, I think in the end it kind of works itself out. Yeah. You know, I had pinks, I had blues, and where I'm at now, being a team guy and kind of realizing it looking back, like, yeah, it works out. Yeah. Like, they realize that the young kids with no experience are probably going to get some pinks from the senior guys who want to stick together and feel like they've earned it more. Right.
So you pass selection, you get selected for the opportunity to go to the next round or to the next stage. What is that?
That's it. So you can pass selection and not get selected. Right. So you can do the entire 2 weeks or 19 days or whatever the hell it is and not get selected if you're the asshole. You get selected, they give you the letter. Regular Army, you go back to your unit, and then you PCS down to North Carolina. For me, it was a direct roll into the Q course and the Q course, the qualification course for SF. And you said it the best. You basically the opportunity to participate in the next piece of it. Right. Nothing's ever given to you. Nothing's ever guaranteed. You could fucking show up the next day and they go and be 10 minutes late and they say, oh, nope, you're out. And you go back to your regular unit or they find somewhere else for you. Yeah. So nothing's given to you. I think when I went through, it was, I'll have to remember because it's been 10 years. And the Q course has, you have language school, you have small unit tactics, you have SEER, you have your MOS, your job school. And then there's some like military.
For you, that your job was 18 Charlie, you were a Special Forces engineer, right? Yep. So that meant you blow shit up.
Yep. Yeah. I would say construction and demolition. And then a lot of it on the team was paperwork. Right. I was basically the team supply guy. So my job was to acquire shit, which reappropriate.
There we go.
Stuff. Yep. So it's, and like I said, back to the Q course, they switch it all up every time. So they switch the order up of what class you attend all the time. I think language might have been the first thing I attended. I just remember waiting a long time to take my language course. Right. Because I knew I wanted to go to Washington State. First group covered Asia. So I had to learn an Asian language. And I wanted Tagalog because it's easy. Like I thought, really? I'll take Tagalog. And being the E3 that I was, they wanted all the more senior guys to get in. So E5s, E6s, E7s would get the slots for language course first. So I sat around waiting for I think 2 iterations before it's basically like getting fucking picked for kickball. They're like, right, hey, you guys are selected. We got these couple slots for language. Who wants it? And I remember staying in formation and they going, hey, we got 1 slot for Mandarin Chinese. And I'm like, fuck, well, that'll get me to Washington. I'll be in first group. But fucking Mandarin. Like, I don't want to take Mandarin. So I raised my hand. I was tired of waiting around. And you basically, when you're in limbo, right, hold, you're working out all the time. You're doing details around Camp McCall, or, Fort Bragg. Yeah. You're just kind of waiting for the next course. And there's a lot of waiting in the Q course.
So where's language school at? Is that out at D-Lab or not at
Monterey?
D-Lab?
So not anymore. No, okay. It used to be, and for some fucking reason they canceled it because SF dudes were getting in trouble. I don't know why. What are a bunch of SF dudes going through language school in Monterey, California gonna do? Right? Yeah. Probably drinking every day. So they brought the course back to North Carolina. So you had to stay in North Carolina. So it was 6 months of Mandarin Chinese. Wow. And dude, of all the physical ass kicking I got through the Q course, And I've told people all the time, the Mandarin Chinese portion was the hardest part of the Q course. That was where I was scared the most that I wasn't going to pass.
Wow.
It's a college. I mean, it's 6 months of straight college, and you're doing 8 hours of Mandarin fucking Chinese a day.
Now, do they teach, or the didactic delivery really like an immersion program where
So they used to do, I think when it was in Monterey, it was more of an immersion program.
Okay.
For us, for that 6 months, we had a teacher, one instructor, and I think there was like 10 people, 10 SF dudes in the course. We might have had one MARSOC guy or something. But you're basically learning from textbooks that D-Lab, that Monterey has provided the Army. So it's kind of like sitting in an elementary school classroom for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Learning nothing but Chinese.
Flashcards.
Yep. Shit ton of flashcards, a shit ton of workbooks, a lot of staying after class, getting tutored by the teacher, like a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Not a lot of writing, not a lot of characters, focusing mainly on speaking and listening and talking. And they did a pretty good job of focusing it towards deployment type stuff, like with the military.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But that was the biggest kick in the butt.
So functional language.
Yep.
It's going to be spoken, listened.
Yeah. And when I got out, they were focusing a lot more on language. But when I went through, you basically got to a team, and anywhere you went, you had a Terp with you anywhere.
Right.
So the desire to, a lot of dudes went to 7th group and spoke Spanish. Like they spoke Spanish their whole lives. Easy.
Right.
Guys like me with Mandarin Chinese, like 6 months passed, I passed the OPI, which is the speaking test that you have to get a 1-1, I think, to pass and move on. And once you get past that, you're like, fuck yeah, I've got it. I'm golden. And then you get to a team, and there's not a whole lot of time to do language stuff.
Right.
There's opportunities to do it, but that's kind of the last thing on your mind is language.
So you go through small unit tactics, you get through SEER, you get through language school. What's the final exam for?
So the final culmination, and once you do your job, right? So you got the medics, you got your commo guys, you got me, the engineer, and the final culmination exercise is called Robin Sage. So that's where you take everybody kind of, when I went through the Q course, my job training was the last portion before Robin Sage. So you basically take all these MOSs, all the jobs, all your medics, all your engineers, all your commo guys, all your gun guys, you bring them back together and you put them on an ODA, and you're on your training ODA. So you got 1 or 2 or 3 of each guy, and it's kind of a setup mission. It's you got a mission to go in to Pineland and liberate Pineland.
Yeah.
Do what you're doing. And man, they go all out. Like people that live in that area of North Carolina have done it for they were doing it when they were a kid, and their parents were doing
so their life is basically a role player.
It's fucking role playing, yeah. It's amazing.
So they're operators.
Oh yeah, they fucking operate. They operate better than I operate because they've been through fucking 12 revolutions.
Right.
They've freed Pineland 12 times before me.
Yeah.
So it's Robin Sage, and once you pass that, you basically complete your mission, and they set it up so everybody got their own part to test their job experience and their job knowledge and all that, and how you work as a team, and you get past that, and that's it. You're done. They called index from Robin Sage, and everyone's fuck yeah, and may or may not end up with a handful or cases, truckloads of beer before we get trucked out from the Robin Sage and have a kind of a team party and bullshit in the woods and drink and celebrate. And then you get assigned at that point you know your language, so you know what group you're going to.
Sure.
And you basically get your orders, and they say, yep, you got to report here to this group at this time, and there you go.
So you're a Green Beret, you graduate, successfully pass all evolutions of the pipeline. You get assigned to first group. What's team life like? What's the op tempo, the training tempo, being the new guy just out of Q course and getting indoctrinated and embedded into a team? What ODA were you assigned to? And if you can talk about that, and then what's team life like for a guy?
So I was on 1325, 1325, which is a dive team. And about that, I've never been a good swimmer, and I'm still not that good a swimmer. But showed up to Washington fucking ready to go and end up in the sergeant major's office. And he goes, what team do you want to be on? And I said the same thing every fucking new Green Beret shows up saying, I want to be in a Halo team, or I want to be on a mountain team. And so that's what I told him, because, I want to jump from airplanes and I want to climb mountains and all that. And he goes, okay, well.
Who doesn't like climbing mountains?
Exactly. Yeah. Who wants to fucking swim? So he says, well, that's great. I got an opening on the dive team, and I got an opening on the open water swim team. Well, fuck. I said, well, okay. And he says, well, come, do your in processing, come back tomorrow, and I'll let you know what you're on. So, I'll get back, says, hey, you're on 1325. It's a dive team. Like, last door on the right of this, of the team building. It's basically a hallway with team rooms on every side. It's like, wow, fuck, you got to knock on the door, announce yourself, and they tell you to enter. And man, that was like, I never got the opportunity to go to dive school between, the trip to Cambodia, training and deployments before I got out. But those guys have a lot of pride, and rightfully so. It takes a lot of fucking work to get through dive school. Went through a couple pre-scubas, and it was it was worse than Mandarin Chinese. But those guys have a lot of pride, as they should, as every team guy, but those guys in particular, I think. And as the new guy, you shut the fuck up. Yeah. You have no say on the team at all, whether you're an E5, and at that point I was an E5, but as an E5 or an E7 new to a team, you don't say a word. You have no job but to learn. You were there to listen and do your job and learn. So it was probably 6 to 8 months of sweeping floors, always being busy. If people weren't doing anything in team room, I was sweeping, I was mopping, I was doing it all, and basically earning my spot. Right. PTing hard, proving to them that I wasn't just a shit kid off the street. Dude, those guys were great, man. I had a really good mentor initially, who I won't name, but he left, unfortunately, a few months after I arrived at the team to do greater things, to be a real operator. Okay. But understood. He was the epitome of Green Beret, and he was a real kind dude that understood being the new guy and mentored me really, really well, and took me kind of under his wing and showed me how team life was. And then, he went on to do better things, and I ended up with a couple other guys on the team that were real mentors to me. And kind of back to op tempo. Yeah. When I first got to Washington, my wife and I were expecting our second daughter. And it was a couple days after I got to the team that we had planned to go to Mount Rainier to do training. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, fuck, man, I got to go train at Mount Rainier with the team. But my wife, Alani, was ready to pop. Yeah. And it just so happened that we had our second daughter, Addie, right before our trip to Rainier. And looking back, at the time, I'm like, fuck, well, I'm going to Rainier. And luckily the team said, no, your second daughter's birth is important. You got to stay here. You got to go to the birth. And so luckily I did, and I missed that training and was there for my daughter's birth. But after that kind of kicked off the op tempo of, if we weren't in a different country, we were in a different state training, or we were training at home. And it's not like team life is never like the 9 to 5. You don't hit 5 o'clock and go, okay, yep, time to go home. Everybody cut loose. Everybody's got a job to do on the team, and you don't leave until everybody's done.
Right.
Like that's the point. So you wake up at 5 o'clock, and the dive team's PT. We PT'd every fucking morning, which, everybody bitches about, but looking back, it was awesome. I mean, it built that team mentality, and we were fit. But you show up at 5, leave the house at 5 o'clock, show up at 6 o'clock for PT, and you may not leave the team room until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, until you're, because everybody's getting their shit done. And there's a little bit of drinking beer in the team room at the end of the day, but it was long days, 5 days a week. And then on the weekends, you're hanging out with the boys, drinking and having barbecues and partying and all that. But it's that constantly. So you're, I think I mentioned Addie when she was born. I think I saw her for probably 2 months in the first year and a half that she was born.
Wow.
When we had Audrey, my first daughter, I was fortunate in the Q course. They gave me 6 months of leave with my daughter because I was, for one, waiting for the next course to start. But I had that time at home. When Addie was born, I didn't have any time with her. I was straight to Cambodia, then back home, then training, then pre-deployment, and then Afghanistan. So it's busy, and God bless those guys. I fucking love every SF dude that there is, and every other veteran. Same thing. Like you have being active duty and then coming to the civilian side. Like fuck, I get paid. What I do now, I get paid for every hour I work. In the military, you get a set salary, and you work way fucking harder than anybody else in the country. I don't care what you're doing.
Yeah.
When you're active duty military, Army, Air Force, Marines, whatever it is, those motherfuckers work harder or longer hours and harder than anybody else in the country.
Now, one of the things with my experience, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, I got the chance to be around and do some missions with some ODAs. One of the things, not just the level-headedness, the calm under pressure, but what I think made the team guys so surgical on a battlefield was your shooting ability. Conventional soldiers, you have to qualify your weapon twice a year. Mm-hmm. Minimum of once a year. Usually if you're in a brigade combat team, you might qualify twice a year. Luckily, especially for me, like as a combat medic, I might, on a really good command, if I had a really good command team, we might have qualified quarterly. What's your shooting tempo like? How often do you guys get range time? How often do you guys shoot?
Shit, if we weren't shooting,
the only way to get good at shooting is to shoot.
Yep. If we weren't shooting once a week, if we weren't at the range once or twice a week, we may miss a week, but it was once or twice a week constantly.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it was maybe in the morning or maybe in the afternoon or maybe the full day, a lot of full days, but we shot a lot. And I think the difference is that it wasn't, like you mentioned, level-headed, mature guys. Like that's what you got to be on an ODA. And thinking outside the box. So all the training we did was, I think surgical, by the numbers, but a lot of it was kind of open, led by our Bravos that kind of came up with the plans, but it was a lot of up to interpretation for yourself. Like what did you need to work on as your own shooter?
Yeah.
And then working as a team and being able to identify that for other people and help people out, be able to tell like, hey, you're sucking here, you need to fix your stance or you're slapping the trigger, you need to adjust that, whatever it may be. But a lot of it, a lot of time behind the gun, but also a lot of time to work on yourself and figure out what you need to do on your own to get better.
Sure.
And not kind of the conventional, everybody online, fire 4 rounds, in the chest. And
right.
So I think that may be the difference a little bit is having that, unlimited ammo, shoot as much as we want, but being able to expand on what we were doing and
sure.
and shooting outside the box, being outside the box in drills and movements and things like that, and not just
basic rifle marksmanship.
Hey, it's range. It's Wednesday's range day. We're going to the range. We got a qual. Here's your 35 rounds or 48 or whatever the fuck it was. And we talk about you talk about surgical, but it was almost less surgical that made us better, I think, in the shooting aspect of it.
Sure. And so over beers and campfires, we've talked about some of the other trainings that you've done that that is a conventional soldier we would have never done or had the opportunity to do, that I think is interesting for folks that aren't aware of the caliber of training or the types of training that the ODAs do. But for the civilian side of things, that might never think, you know where I'm going with this,
Yep.
that might never think for 1 second that the guy walking next to him on the street is a Green Beret who's training for a counter-terror operation.
Who's getting paid? Who's working? Yep.
Right.
Yeah, in downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was the beauty of SF, is we did everything, and it was a lot of, it's just knowing your environment and what you need at the time. So yep, I did a training in various states, and it not just shooting. That biggest part of SF is the mental game.
Right.
Like I said initially, it all starts with selection, knowing that you're going to pass it, and not quitting, and having that mental strength to be able to push through everything, and then being on a team and being able to make smart, sound decisions on your own, and knowing that if you're, you may be out with one other guy or two other guys, or be a small team, and you have to make the decisions that can lead your team one way or the other for the rest of the deployment.
Right.
You might make an international incident, or you may save the day. And so you got to train on that.
Sure.
So I was fortunate to be able to do some training, with that in populated areas. And a lot of it's not shooting, a lot of it's talking to people and building that rapport, and we're force multipliers. Our job is to go in certain areas and get the indigenous forces to work for themselves, to
Right.
be able to fight for themselves. And there's a lot of different ways you got to do that.
Sure.
So
Sure. So we're going to transition a little bit. In the introduction, I talked about being a former Green Beret. So
Yep.
you're not a Green Beret anymore. You're currently working with Anchorage Police Department.
So once you're a Green Beret, you're always a Green Beret.
Thank you for the correction.
You always have it.
Correct.
In you.
And a Marine
I'm
would
not
have said the
actively-
same thing to
Yep.
me about, I'm still a Marine.
Yep. I'm not actively a Green Beret.
Nice.
Sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
No, I deserve that one. So what led you to leave the teams?
So I've got 3 daughters, Audrey, Addie, and Avon. And in a twofold, I'll say it is because of them and my wife that I got out of active duty, that I left the teams for good reason.
Absolutely.
Absolutely no blame to them. They are the good reason that I got out. Like I said, Addie, my middle daughter, I saw 2 months in a month and a half of her, or a year and a half of her life. So when I got back from a 9-month trip to Afghanistan, I hadn't seen her. Like, she had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
I'd seen her on, first 6-month deployment or 5 months of deployment. We didn't have Skype. It was sat phone. We were in the middle of nowhere, and I talked to my family once a week, maybe.
Right.
And when you do that, you kind of get in the mindset of deployment. Like, I'm deployed. I'm missing my family, but it fucks me up when I talk to them. So,
Right.
you want to end up not talking to them.
Yeah.
So I had 2 daughters when my time to, and I extended twice in the Army. So 6 months a time. So I did 6 years active duty, and I extended twice. That got me to 6 years. But it was being gone from my daughters and knowing that had I stayed active duty and I'd continue with the op tempo, I'd be gone all the time, I would no doubt be divorced, and I would never see my daughters. I wouldn't have time to see them.
Right.
And by no fault of my wife's, no fault of theirs, it would be all my fault. People get in love with deployments. Like, it's fucking awesome. There's nothing like being deployed.
No. And again, I can't draw correlation to a deployment with a special forces team. And I've made it abundantly. I try to make it abundantly aware on all the shows. I've done some cool things. I've played around in some cool rings. I've got to go some cool trainings. But I was never anything more than a conventional soldier. I think it was pretty top tier for conventional side of things. But I was never special forces, never went to selection. And Sebastian Younger did a really good job of explaining why soldiers miss war. And if you haven't seen his TED Talk about why soldiers miss war, not just Theron, but for the listeners, you should look that one up. And it gets down to the very DNA of being a warrior. And it's a simple concept. It's about the man and woman, or the brothers to your left and right. It's not necessarily about mission. It's about the people that are next to you, and that you know that you can rely on them. Yep. You know that they will die for you, and you will never get that anywhere else in the world.
Nope.
And that bond that exists with brothers on a battlefield, it can't be replicated. There's not a drug that you can smoke, snort, ingest, inject. There's nothing you can do to replicate that feeling of being alive. And when you live through your first firefight, and at the end of it, and you're like, motherfuck, yep, that was insane. And you kind of pat yourself down. Holy shit. Yeah, no holes. I'm not bleeding. There's nothing can replace that. And I think that's some of the problems that the warrior community has with addiction and drug abuse and alcohol abuse when they get out of the military is either they're trying to deaden some things that they want to keep hidden, yep, or they're trying to replicate that high, because there's nothing that you can do.
And neither one works. You know, because I've done both. I've tried to suppress it with alcohol, and then I've tried to find things, we'll segue into again, in the future, I think, but tried to find things that replicate it. And there's nothing, war is hell, but war is a lot of fun too.
It is fun.
And guys get in love with being deployed. Being, it's not easy, but it's simple. Your day to day is what you're going to do. You're going to wake up, you're going to go on patrol once or twice, you're going to fucking eat, and you're going to work out.
And for the most part, downrange, when the bullets start flying, you know which direction they're coming from.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, who you're fighting.
In corporate America, you might not see the bullets, and you might not know which side of the fence they're coming from.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's, that's just politics of anything. So now you're a police officer with Anchorage Police Department, yep, and you're detailed on the SWAT team, and you're a sniper on the SWAT team as well, correct?
Yep.
How's the correlation between Special Forces teams and that kind of team bond? And
so, like I said, and I stand by it, there's nothing that will compare ever to the bond of an ODA or of military in general. I got out active duty for my family, to be able to be there for my daughters and raise my daughters. And, I miss being active. I miss being an SF dude every single day. I never regret getting out. I never regret spending my days with my daughters and my wife.
Sorry for interrupting you. I've made that very distinct statement, because I get asked invariably a few times a year with different junkets that I go to, or my civilian career now and whatnot, two questions. Are you sorry that you got out, or that you retired when you did? And do you miss it? And I don't ever regret leaving the service when I did. I think it was my time to go, and I miss it every minute.
Yep. And I think that's probably the same answer for everybody that's done it, that's been in the military, So I did that, and I thought, go from a large scale of being in the military and protecting the country to a smaller scale of protecting the city, the city that I live in, the city that my daughters are going to grow up in, which is Anchorage. And, came home, I was born and raised here. And I thought, man, there's, being a police officer is cool. I never wanted to be a police officer. I always wanted to be in the military. But I thought, man, it'll be an easy transition. They're hiring, and I'm an Army, active Army, so I got no drug use. I've got a clear record. I got a security clearance, so it's a pretty easy hire for a police department. And it paid well. So,
right.
So, getting out of the active duty was the scariest thing of, well, fuck, how do I make my money? I got to have a job. So it all kind of lined up into the police department, and, pays well. I stayed in the Guard, and that's a whole different story going from active duty to Guard, because those two are also not the same. I spent 2 years in 19th Group flying down to Washington, still in SF on an ODA, and it's just not the same.
Right.
It's not the same brotherhood. You're not spending every single day. You're not spending 10 or 12 hours a day with these guys. And it's kind of the same with the police department, It's respectable work. I'm proud of what I do. My daughters and my wife are proud of what I do. My family's proud of what I do. I get to save the day.
Yeah.
People fucking hate cops, which is different, you know. When you go anywhere in uniform in the military, you go, hey, thanks for your service. When you fucking go out in a police uniform, you get a fucking middle finger and hey, fuck you. Which is all right, because that's not why people do it.
Right.
And then on the SWAT team, you know, I made the SWAT team almost probably 3 years ago. And I thought, and that was kind of my holding on to a brotherhood, having that small, tight knit group of guys or girls, guys in this case, that you train with together, you work together, you go on call outs together. And it's much, so standard officer in the police department, you do your 10 hours and you may talk to other officers on a call, but you kind of spend your time in your own car by yourself, at least at APD. Which is cool. I'm getting to reflect on myself or choose my own path for the day if I'm not getting dispatched to calls. It's kind of nice, but you don't have that quite the friendship and the camaraderie as a regular officer. You go do your 10 hours, you go on a call with certain other officers, and then you go the fuck home. Being on the SWAT team, we're only a part-time team, so we train 3 days a month and then go on our call-outs. And shout out to SWAT team. Love those guys.
Oh yeah. I've got to hang out with a couple of them.
Oh yeah.
When we in several times we go camping, barbecues. When you used to be my neighbor.
Yep.
Asshole. Sold your house and moved. But and that's something I think when we met each other when you moved in. Other than the military that we kind of bonded, I think on earlier is I've been through SWAT school for the listeners that don't know me. I'd gone through the CONTOMS course, the Counter Narcotics and Terrorist Operations Medical Support course with the Department of Homeland Security and FBI as a SWAT medic. And then I was, through a mutual support agreement, while I was still on active duty, assigned to a SWAT team out in New Jersey. So I've gotten to be in that side of things. And I've always loved law enforcement. I've always, since my time, I was on Moser, Monmouth County Emergency Response Team. A lot of respect for the type of work that goes into being, I know we made fun of it, but a SWAT operator or a SWAT officer. And I was the TAC P. I was the medic.
And everybody loves a medic.
That was, there's that. You know, but yeah, it was kind of neat. You know, my very first training when I got on Mozart, we were doing Columbine drills at a school that was being remodeled. I think in Ocean. We show up and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's one of the new medics," and blah blah blah. Oh, he's an Army guy. He's like, "Do they like you like to get in the stack?" I'm like, "I'm usually number 6." They're like, "Here's an M4, let's go." So we just ran drills and a hot wash and drills and a hot wash, and we just shot all day. And they were like, "Hey, that guy, he likes to get after it," you know. And then when the team guys saw that the medic wanted to be in the stack and not just sit in the rig all day and provide backup on the perimeter, but wanted to be kinetic and wanted to be in the stack with everybody, and then could halfway decently shoot. It was a great experience for me, and it helped me. Not that I didn't have a sense of appreciation for the SWAT teams that protect us in our communities, but help me understand the process and have a little bit more respect there, just because it's not easy. The selection process, they don't take everybody. Even as an Army guy who had a deployment under his belt and a federal SWAT course, and they had to pass their selection process, their PT tests, and everything to be able to potentially call out and stack with them is. So yeah, it's
a lot of work.
Yeah.
And call outs don't happen while you're at work ready to go. You know, call outs happen at 3:00 in the morning when you just got to sleep. The team, I love them. And I tell everybody, as far as being a cop at APD, still the best thing going at APD is being on the SWAT team.
Nice.
You know, no matter what people say, the SWAT team is the best thing doing this job. I can't imagine now not being on the team.
Yeah.
And I kind of caveat back to my old job in SF. There's nothing that makes us special other than master the basics and doing it more often. You know, I'm not the best shooter. I'm not the biggest. I'm not the fastest. There's guys on the team right now that are operators. They are legit operators. They shoot fast. They move. They're tactically sound. Like excellent fucking dudes. Amazing guys.
Yeah.
They just chose the SWAT life instead of Army life.
Sure.
Whatever it is.
Sure. So how's COVID-19 fucking up your job? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so I got to wear a fucking mask every day now. All the calls, the department's got to wear the N95 masks for every contact we have, which is kind of a pain in the ass. We're just starting to get a little bit of normal people going crazy. People that are quarantined at home with their spouses or roommates, a lot of roommates that are now quarantined working from home.
I never thought of that. Is there a spike in domestic violence calls starting to happen, or?
And so police work is weird because we deal with the same people.
Right.
With DV type stuff all the time. So now we're getting more DV calls that haven't quite reached the physical portion of it, right, where a normal husband and wife are together and they're getting in arguments and they're realizing like, well, all right, shit, we need to stop this before it continues on. So we're getting a lot more of the DV stuff, I think, before it reaches the point of an arrest, before it gets physical, or before one of them beats on the other.
Okay.
So a lot more of those calls. We got a lot less people on the roads, a lot less traffic, a lot less that kind of stuff.
Where'd all the homeless people go?
The Sullivan Arena.
Really? We were down, Christy and I drove down to 49th State to get a growler filled up. We still are trying to support the local economy as best as we can. I talk about that every week to try to support your local economy.
Was that a shout out to 49th State?
It was a shout out to 49th State. $5
meals for first responders and nurses.
Yes.
In the place that we are. I love those guys. I've been in there and talked to them a couple of times and got my $5 meal. And those guys are fucking awesome.
And it's like, what, 19 miles door to door from where we live out here in Eagle River to down there.
Something like that, yeah.
And we go down once or twice a week to get a growler fill or to order dinner from them to support them, because they're phenomenal, trying to still stay open for the community.
Oh, yeah.
They do wonders for the first responder community. So
those guys are awesome. Homeless, they're still there. They're just in the background.
Yeah.
I think,
we're hiding them better right now.
What brings them out is people giving them money. And now people aren't driving around as much giving them money, so they got to work a little harder or go somewhere else for it. So stop giving them money.
Yeah. So team life, SWAT team, what's next for you? I mean, you sound like you've done a lot. True patriot, served your country,
Thank you.
Done exceptional things. I just truly enjoy being around you.
Thanks, man.
And because we both like good beer, and you're fun to be with. We flashbanged our neighbor.
I don't recall the incident to which you refer.
No, I don't know what we're talking about. So what's next for you?
So, we might talk later on. I struggle a lot with the transition from the active duty to the police department and being able to deal with that. And it's no doubt, I think every veteran struggles with the transition. So I went to...
It was like my first 4 episodes.
I know, exactly. So that's why I'm kind of bringing it back to it.
Yeah.
Huge struggle transitioning from active duty life to regular life. And it's a roller coaster. Everybody knows it kind of goes up and down, and you have good days and bad days. Not too long ago, I had a couple of really bad days, a couple of bad weeks. And I was fortunate enough for some guys at work who have been through it to go through something called Soldier's Heart, where South Central Foundation puts on for lack of a better term, a retreat for military veterans, first responders, fire, dispatchers, everybody that's involved in that. And it's a week-long reflection, basically peer-led, sit down and talk. And everybody said, fuck, I don't want to talk about my feelings and all this shit. But it was life-changing. So a week long of talking to other first responders, other veterans, a lot of veterans who are now first responders up here in Alaska, a lot of troopers, a lot of APD, going through the same shit that every other veteran and first responder goes through. You know, it's not an easy job. Neither one of them are. Fire, everybody, you only see the shit of life. Everything, you know, nothing's good.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and it helped me, you know, helps a lot of guys, and realizing that everybody's dealing with the same shit. Men and women, old, young, you know, there were people there in their 70s that have been dealing with the same shit for 50 years.
Right.
It doesn't just go away. You know, PTSD and the struggle that veterans have and first responders have doesn't just disappear. So focuses on that and made me realize that kind of the next step for me, hopefully, is to go back to school and do my part to help other veterans and other first responders with struggles that I've had.
In what capacity? How so?
So for me, my plan now is to start looking into a social work program.
Nice.
Focusing on strictly veterans and first responders.
You know, I know a guy who owns a foundation who likes to help veterans.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
That might be looking for social workers in a few years.
Yep. So you know, the thought, obviously it would pay way less than I'm making now.
Right.
But for my own mental health and the ability to help others going through the same shit is really important to me.
I think, you know, and so for the listeners, next week, we're going to do a complete show with myself and the other two principals, Eric and Luke from Remedy Alpine, kind of about that's a great almost pause point to lead into talking about next week's show. But the point I want to make behind it is what we'll talk about next week, not just in Remedy Alpine, but the purposes of this show. And I talked about the purposes of this show in the pilot back in January it's kind of selfish. This is therapeutic for me. For me to sit and talk about veterans issues, to have a brother to be able to sit across the table for me, to sip a beer or to sip some coffee and just talk about our life to help other people. But for me as a medic, and I talked about this in a couple episodes, I can't troop the line anymore. I can't be doc anymore. This is my way to still be doc.
Yep. This
is my way to still help veterans. So, what I think is you find a lot of guys that were highly successful or that were successful at a high tempo or a high level, when they get out, they drop because that gets taken away. It's like sucked out in a fucking vacuum.
Yep.
And then I see one of two things. People either they go down a path where they don't recover. And they fight either addiction, they fight financial problems, they fight just a myriad of negativity because they can never mentally put themselves in a position to make up for what they've lost. Or guys like you and I that have hit a low and said, fuck it, I'm going to climb out of this. And I'm going to climb out of this by helping other veterans. And not only does that help spread the healing, for lack of sounding touchy-feely, but it continues to help us to keep us from getting back there.
Yep, absolutely. So, I agree.
The Soldier's Heart program that Theron went to and mentioned, there will be a link to them in the show notes. So if you're curious about them, we will have a link in the show notes so you can go check them out. Wonderful program. I've not yet been able to go through their program, even though I'm qualified to go through. I've spent my time with Remedy Alpine trying to help folks instead of taking care of myself. So that's great. I for one appreciate you spending as much time as you have talking about stories, sharing your vantage point or from your lens, what it's like to go through, being able to accept a really difficult decision for the right reasons.
Yep.
And to progress through life and then realize that there's always doors, you know. Special Forces team was a door that you walked through. You did that. You were successful. Then you walked through another door for the right reason.
Yep, sure.
That led you down a path. And now what sounds like for another right reason, you're always looking in another door to find what that next step is. And I think that's a good closing point for this segment is for other veterans and folks to realize that you don't always have to be on one set path.
Yep.
You can change your path. And you can stay in control You just have to be open-minded and listen for the direction marker to tell you when to turn.
Yep. And I think the big thing that took me a long time to learn is acceptance. Accepting where you're at now and why you're doing it and remembering those reasons.
Right. Well, that's the main part of our segment. Theron, I appreciate you being here. We're going to take a pause for just a second, and we're going to come back. We've got a question from the audience out of Fort Huachuca. Theron and I are going to rip through that together, so we'll be back in just a moment.
Nice. Wasn't bad, huh?
So a lot of this, so tomorrow in between calls and tomorrow night, what I'll do is I'll go find some of the
Oh, yeah.
some of the pauses and breaks. Because right now we were like at an hour and 4 minutes, but that includes the intro. The whole show length right now is like an hour and 4 minutes, and we still got one more segment to do, that'll take 4 minutes. Yeah. That'll probably get it down to, I'll be able to get it down to about an hour. So
Nice.
Let me go in real quick. And what are we doing? We're going to do, I chose the transition music, operator error. So we're going to import audio from short sound bites, operator. And I only chose it because it sounds cool and it had the term operator in it. So let's grab this. Let's move it up on top of that. Gotta be able to slide. Let's dial this in a little bit. I can hear somebody talking in my headphones. I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
I can hear somebody. So this is what it...
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty operator.
Yeah. All right, and then I gotta put in another audio track, add new stereo. Move I'm getting better at this.
Dude, I can only imagine your first couple shows how to struggle it probably was. Fucking hours and hours probably to click and drag.
Well, yeah, and I learned to build it as I go.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so then at the end, now that I'm doing the last segment or two with a guest, that's all I really have to edit. Anyway, yeah, that's... I'll grab another beer. You want one?
Yeah, I'll take one.
So you
Use the bathroom, actually.
You seem to get... What's that?
Where's the bathroom?
Use the one at the top of the steps. Upstairs. I don't know what the kids' one looks like.